Michael. It is February 17th. So I'm looking forward to your video. Don't I know about technical difficulties? The last one I sent you, honestly, I kind of felt bad about. And something happened with my editing. I don't know, but we're batting zero right now, man. So I get how it is. So we went to see, when we were kids, Varake. And it was one of their big top touring shows. And it went to Chicago. That show was really good. I think that show, as much as any that I'm aware of, sort of exemplifies what Cirque du Soleil is. It has all of the sort of uncanny strangeness that is very characteristic of that company's work, but also the storyline throughout and the integration of circus acts into a theater story. So I saw Alegria, which is actually an older show from 1996, but recently they have remounted it with a new production. If you're not a theater goer, you might not know that this happens a lot in like theater and opera. They'll take an old work and sort of reimagine it, either change the context or put a veneer of a context on it or something like that. So I remember when we were kids, we also saw a lot of Shakespeare. We saw two different Julius Caesars, one in Chicago and one in Milwaukee, and one was transplanted from ancient Rome to corporate America. We saw another one which was set in World War II Europe. Everything's the same, all the lines are the same. It's Shakespeare's show. They've just changed in the costuming and the sets, and that's what an updated production is like. Well, that's what they did with Alegria. So it was great. It was right up there with Varake, and I had a great time. And not only was it good, it really brought back a lot of great memories of growing up seeing Varake, but also the Bravo channel used to have a New Year's Eve marathon of Cirque du Soleil. So anything that had been put to film, they would play in a marathon, and we used to watch that. And then we'd flip over and watch the ball drop in New York at midnight, and then flip back and finish the marathon. So it was cool because it was something old and memorable and familiar, but something new and fresh and interesting and really quality. I mean, you really feel for them. This is like film quality stuff, but they're doing it in their own way. They're not interested with a Hollywood script style performance. They're interested in giving a performance which is funny, physical theater. So all of that to say, it was great. And unlike a lot of things from childhood, didn't backslide one bit. It's just as good as I remember Cirque being, and I think anybody could enjoy it. And it's probably some of the best theater in the world. So, for all you people out there, go see a Cirque show if you can. They're not always cheap, but they're not so expensive either. If one comes through your town, or you go to Las Vegas or Orlando or something like that, check it out. It's worth it. They're great. So, you want to know Trek versus Star Wars, huh? Oh, that's all? Here's what I think. And I'm going to go ahead and give myself permission to go into overtime here. I think they're completely different. And people make the mistake of comparing them because they're both sci-fi. Whatever that means. There are things that are comparable. It's not that there isn't a worthy discussion to be had comparing them. There's good discussions to be had there. But I think the stereotypical hate relationship between Trek and Star Wars is a complete misnomer and unnecessary. And I think that because they are saying different things. And this is not my opinion. George Lucas says this. If you just break it down to its elements, Star Wars is a soap opera. It's a paternity soap opera. And that's fine, but let's not get it twisted, right? It's not something other than that. It's a paternity soap opera with great special effects and using a certain mythic archetype, the hero's journey. There's a call to action on Tatooine for Luke, and in subsequent trilogies, draws them out of their comfort zone for a worthy cause. There are, archetypes of, and George Lucas speaks about the characters in archetypal ways. There are, the old disguised wizard who, if you're nice to him, will help you, and if you're mean to him, will curse you. That's Yoda. Um, all kinds of things like that, which echo mythology from all of human storytelling. So that's what Star Wars is. Meanwhile, over in Star Trek land, we've got stories going about ethics and philosophy and science. The emphasis is just completely different. Couldn't be farther from a soap opera. By comparison, it's kind of boring. And that's why a lot of people can't get into Star Trek. Normal people, not like fun nerds like us. And I'll say something about this point. This is important to me. I like philosophy. I'm no expert, but I've read a lot of philosophy. And I enjoy it. And I didn't just do it in school and now I tout it when I'm trying to act all woke at Starbucks. I know some philosophy and read it on my own. That's valuable. And recent Star Trek, in my view, lacks that. They go for the same sort of simple moralizing that you find in mythic archetype. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not Star Trek. You need to put your characters in ethically precarious situations and watch them work through it. And maybe sometimes they come to a decision that we can agree with. Maybe sometimes they don't. But we always learn from it. It's never, you're my dad. There are parentage stories in Star Trek. There is some human character development. But largely, you can drop in on any episode in the series, and you don't need to know which episode came before or which episode is coming after, by and large, to understand what's going on in that episode. They're just doing completely different things, and I like them both a lot, but I think the issue here is that new Star Trek, to some extent Deep Space Nine, but more so Star Trek Discovery, and so far what I've seen of Picard, they're trying to do a Star Wars with Star Trek. And it just doesn't read as true, because that's not what it's about. We're not going on a rip-roaring adventure. Sometimes we do have fun adventures and there's, violence and existential threats, but that's not the point. We're going through those because we're fighting for what we believe in. It's about principles. I think that's something that is largely lost in society now, in general. Not just Star Wars and Star Trek. How could they avoid being caught up in it? And I don't know that there is leadership, political or cultural or otherwise, in our society, which can fill that void. And I'm not sure where it'll come from or if we'll get it again, but we need it. So I think the issue is much, much, much larger. But I have some hope. We go through periods like this. We went through McCarthyism. We went through, Indiana Jones had a series of great movies, and then there was Temple of Doom, which was absolute garbage. Sometimes life is hard, So I don't know. I'm not trying to really make a political message here, other than to just say principles matter. And, I think everybody should decide on some principles that matter to them, that make sense, and help the world make sense, and live by them. Maybe that's the philosopher in me, but I think it's kind of practical, too. Writers' rooms of Star Wars and Star Trek, and any franchise which a large company purchases, ought to do a little research on what the core principles of that franchise are, and then write stories according to them. Develop them if you want, evolve them, bring them forward, propel them, that's all great. Don't trample them, though, because that's not helping. We don't need to just throw out the old. in the name of some misnomer we call progress. And we don't need to remake the things that we loved and relive them over and over again until everyone's sick of it. Create something new that feeds off what came before, like anything. Seems pretty uncomplicated to me. Then again, a lot of the things which maybe seem uncomplicated to me are kind of a huge mess right now, so I don't know. Anyway, sorry to have kind of another rando video there for you, and I went pretty far over, so you got some doozy questions there, though. Some wants to talk about with Cirque, and some wants to talk about with the state of things in Star Wars and Star Trek, but anyway, I am excited to see your response and everything that you prepared before, and I hope you have a good day. See you later, bud.